So, in today's episode, I welcome Rene Huey Lipton. Rene has spent her career branching out as opposed to moving up, gathering the knowledge and experiences she needed to become the type of teammate, founder, dreamer, and doer that she truly wanted to be. The result is a highly empathetic powerhouse of insights and ideas who loves to dig in, ask what if, and get stuff done. Over the course of her career, she's worked with and learned from the best in behavioral economics, human-centered design, and cultural codification, not to mention storytelling in all its forms, making her an incredible asset from brand articulation through the creative process and into product innovation. She's worked for GSD&M, FCB, Brain Juicer, and Sparks and Honey on brands like Southwest Airlines, Coke, Puma, GM, McDonald's, AB InBev, and P&G. She is now the founder of the Dame Collective. Let me tell you that this has been an amazing meeting in which we talk about authenticity, the importance of being connected and at ease, and what it truly means to transform. So welcome, Rene. I'm so excited to have you here. It's been so long.
I know. It's hard to believe, but yeah.
How are things?
Things are good. Things are really good. It's been an interesting 4 or 5 years, but I feel like the energy is that I put out is now sort of coming back to me. So I'm hopeful. It's been difficult for freelancers especially this year. 2024 was difficult for people who are freelancers, but yeah. But I've been using my time to write a workbook on authenticity, on finding your authentic voice. I've been exploring my own art. Yeah, I cannot complain.
That is fabulous.
And how about you?
It's amazing. So things are good as well. Things continue to transform and evolve. And I used COVID to stop dyeing my hair. So talk about authenticity right there.
It.
Bingo.
I love it. I mean, that's a hair color that women pay to go, to get now.
Yeah. So people actually stop me in the street and say, where did you get that done? And I'm like, no, it's my own. And what's quite wonderful as well is it's really put me in contact with my own ethnicity as well. So I started recognizing my own ancestry in my coloring.
Oh, that's so interesting.
So that's been really quite a process of discovery as well. It's about authenticity for sure. Yeah.
Was it freeing in a way?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I mean, just by the bills at the hairdressers and the
right. Yeah, this is the first time in decades that I've had in my natural. I mean, I put a little blonde in here because I was feeling like, who am I without platinum or crazy red or blue? But yeah.
You look lovely.
Thank you. So do you.
And I can see the passion. I mean, what's bringing that passion about? Tell us about your work.
Yeah. So I am a bit of a artist. I was an artist searching for, their thing. And I tried, fabric. I tried, all type of sort of, crocheting and all the embroidery and all that sort of stuff. There's a prize in England called the Hand Lock Prize, which is for embroidery. And I've entered it a couple times, knowing that there's no way in heck, that I'd win because these people are astounding. But it was so interesting sort of saying, because they give you a brief, and I have to say, they're the worst briefs in the world. There's like 52 ideas in them, and then you sort of create against it. And I just found myself really just letting go of what I call the comparison construct, right? Mm-hmm. Looking and sort of comparing what I do to everything else. And I just let it go. And I create, the things I created were fun. And then I realized that it really wasn't my thing. I found mosaic and went to a class in Italy and learned from this amazing woman. And I find it soothing, the cutting and the placing and the thinking about it. It's a much slower pace for me, which when I'm embroidering or doing other things, with fabric or anything, I tend to work fast. This is very slow.
Mm-hmm.
So it really gives me time to think, to calm down, to let little ideas noodle in my head. And at the same time, let's see, we moved to Seattle for a job. And before I was even out of corporate housing, they laid us all off. So I just sold our house, moved my family. My youngest was in their senior year. It was just like so bad. But I realized after that, so I was late 40s at that time. No, I was I was 50, 51. And I realized really quick that advertising is not, they don't want to hire anybody over 50.
That's right.
They don't want to hire anybody over 40. So I started the Dame Collective, which is a website for women over 40 and the companies who need them. It's a free site, and they put up their resumes and their books, whatever it is. It doesn't matter to me where you live or what you do. It's free. I just want a place where only women's CVs get opened, because otherwise ours get opened up to 30% less. Yeah. On sites like Indeed, on sites like LinkedIn. And I did this thing where I started it and sort of said, oh, it's amazing. It'll just go by itself. Of course it didn't. But slowly I'm learning how to run something like that, having people do, blog posts, making sure all the, the HR people, the hirers know it, all that sort of stuff. And then at the same time, I started writing a book about finding your own authentic voice. And I did that because back in, I think, 2017, I spoke at the 3% conference. Are you aware of it?
No, I don't know it.
So Kat Gordon, who was amazing, was a creative in the industry, in advertising. And she realized that only 3% of the creatives were, of the creative directors were women. So she started the 3% conference in order to up that. And it went on for I think 10 years, just amazing. And I spoke at this conference and my slides went haywire. And I just said, excuse my French, fuck it, I'm just doing this. And I just was myself, I just sort of spoke from the heart. I spoke about how women, we spend so much energy hiding ourselves, hiding our true selves, hiding when we have a period, hiding when, we have cramps, hiding when we're going through menopause. And all of that energy it takes to hide, to sort of make yourself smaller, is energy that you could be putting someplace else.
Yeah.
And in with that, I spent a lot of my career trying to be what either I thought a planner should be, a strategic planner, or what, the organization that I was working for thought a strategic planner should be.
Yeah.
And it all just sort of came into a perfect storm about 12 years ago. It all just sort of went whoosh. And ever since then, I've been on this journey of trying to be my own authentic self, trying not to sort of be or worry about how other people see me or what they think of me. And it's been really amazing. I went to a 3% offsite a couple of weeks ago in Sonoma, where Kat had a woman named Bonnie Wan who wrote The Life Brief. Mm-hmm. Fantastic book. And we worked through it, and it really was sort of a culmination. I just was able to sort of use that book to sort of organize my thinking about the different transformations I'm going through and have been.
Beautiful. And how liberating as well.
Oh my God.
Because we have all these tools in our work, right? And we just don't apply them to ourselves.
Right? We don't. I spend hours thinking up the perfect line, for a brief for somebody else. And yet I've never done it for myself. Right.
Yeah.
And I came up with, there's multiple things. The Life Brief has multiple things to figure out. And these things I wrote, I'm actually making them into little funny posters for myself because they were so honest and true, right? And the silliest one, or the silliest one maybe sounding, is really the most important to me, because based on what we were just talking about, me trying to be someone else
Yeah.
and trying to fit in, or all that sort of stuff, all that energy. I was talking, and there's only, I think, 20 of us women there. They keep it small. And it was so powerful. I was talking about how I was supposed to be going to a new conference called Black Week that Walter Gear and some other people started in New York. I heard it was amazing. Wasn't able to go in the end, but I was so anxious a week ahead of time about packing for it, because I thought, oh, well, I'm going to be amongst all these people who are like super cool and super awesome. And I'm kind of not, kind of dressed like a dork. And so I came up with this line about,
Don't.
yeah, I came up with this line about, I choose to pack for myself, pack my own bag, right? Which was so like, pack my own bag.
It's funny. I have a wonderful life mentor. Her name is Colby, and she used to be the executive creative director for a network here in the Netherlands, but she's originally from Santa Fe, and she's about 20 years older than I am. And at some point, she goes like, "Carola, listen, go get yourself some nice leggings, some really nice dresses, and it's like being in your pajamas all day. No one's going to notice."
Right.
I thought that was the most brilliant advice. Like,
Yeah.
you know, to transform is actually a designerly endeavor. And what we actually do is we turn existing conditions into preferred ones. So that what is into what might be better. And of course, that requires asking yourself the question, for whom is it preferred? Right?
Right.
Because you can serve shareholders and you can serve profit and capitalism, but you can also use it to say, what do I need to feel more comfortable in the world, to be more authentic in the world? It sounds to me that that's your process, your transformational journey.
Yes, absolutely.
And how
And
would you say that that sort of is affecting people around you, from your inner circle to the people you serve to the people you work with? How's that rippling across
it's,
the domains?
I've realized that the more authentic I am, the more vulnerable I am, the more transparent I am, I connect with people much easier. It puts other people at ease, so they're able to sort of be the same, to sort of open up and just sort of say what it is. Um, and I think, no, I know it's made me a better parent. Our youngest child has just transitioned. Well, has been transitioning, quite frankly. They came to us at 10 and said, I think I'm asexual. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Why? Well, I don't really feel one way or the other. And all my friends are saying, well, I'm this, I'm pan, I'm bi. And so this little 10-year-old came to me and had worked it out that they hadn't really felt one way or the other. So they're just asexual.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to Clay at the time, I said, well, you have a problem revising. So stay open to
Yeah.
right, revising. And I think back to that conversation and I'm like, that was the moment when I started realizing that I need to listen to myself as much, what I'm saying. And
Yeah.
Clay went through a number of transitions. Oh, I'm a lesbian, or I'm this, or I'm that, until they finally just said, I am Clay and I am he. And working to be a good parent, a good person through all of that. And what that quote you were just talking about, what am I telling them? How am I helping them? And is it right, the best for them? Because that's all it was about.
Yeah.
I couldn't think if it was best for my parents, who would be uncomfortable with it. I couldn't think about if it was best for me, because I was worried, terrified for their safety. It was about them. And it really was an eye opener. And almost a year ago, they had their top surgery. And the difference in just how they held themselves, how they moved, how they dressed, everything, it was so powerful. I mean, I am in awe of their bravery.
And I'm in awe of yours because that's a whole mothering journey in and of
Yeah,
itself. But as
yeah.
you say, connecting and being at ease starts with
Mm,
ourselves.
it does.
And it
It
seems
really,
like they mirrored this to you.
yeah. I mean, I we are so lucky that somehow we were the type of parents where our kids will tell us anything and call
Mm.
up and all that sort of stuff. Um, and it's been an exercise in thoughtful response as opposed to reaction. Um, you know,
Yeah.
I've tried to teach myself. I've talked about it in this book on authenticity about really being there and listening. I had a problem when I was younger. When listening to someone talk, I wasn't hearing them. I was always thinking about what can I say that sounds just as smart or smarter or this or that, which was ridiculous. And
Mhm.
I think a lot of people early in their career go through that, right? Because they want to be seen as being worthy of being in the room, which is ridiculous. If they hired you, you're worthy of being anywhere in the building, right?
Right. Exactly.
um, and just going through this with them and sort of realizing that the whole idea of being present, being and really hearing them and not having to be seen as smart or this or that is so much better in the long run for both myself and the people in the room. Yeah.
Would you say that the key to that is in the not knowing? Like obviously nothing prepares us for navigating these kinds of challenges because some of
Right.
them are also linked to the zeitgeist, also generationally, like you're saying, how do grandparents deal with such a thing? Generationally, it's very difficult. I
Yeah.
think that we're at a time and with these challenges within our families, but even with, gray-haired creative people trying to find jobs, right? There is this whole thing of the unknown, facing the unknown. Like you can't face the unknown with answers because you ain't got them. Like,
Right. Right.
wh-
My therapist once said to me, Rini, stay on the edge of curious. Right. And that was so like bam for me.
yeah,
So powerful. Um, and, it's for someone like me with a brain that is constantly just pulling in information, there are a lot of things I know just enough to be super dangerous on, which means that in those moments, I thought, oh, well, I know something about this. Let me throw it out there. But I just knew something. It wasn't like additive or generative a lot of the time. It was just, yeah, I read that book or blah, 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 you know?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a different type of collaboration as well. Like I definitely am one for thinking out loud. So I
Mm,
organize my thoughts as an extrovert by speaking with other people.
right.
And then probably I'm throwing things around that aren't fully finished thoughts. And that
Right.
is pretty dangerous indeed, as you say. So I think this is also a time where this space between reaction and response, right? This very meaningful difference is allowing us to revisit and understand things in different ways, coming much more from such a grounded place of authenticity. And
Yeah.
you mentioned the 3%.
Hmm.
What other things have inspired you and Clay? What has
Right.
inspired you as well in your journey other than Clay?
Yeah. um, I won't tell him straight to his face, but he'll hear this because he's in the other room. My husband is a profound reader and thinker. Um, we are
A
vast,
musician.
and yeah, music, everything. He's just poet, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And his reading list is now in my Kindle. They've merged somehow.
Oh.
So I'll go looking for one of my silly books and see something. And I've been reading a lot of Walter Benjamin lately, who was a back in the 1930s. He was a philosopher, a Jewish philosopher who grew up um, in Germany and went through all of that. But he talks a lot about transformation. He talks about this whole idea of reproduction. And I think about it a lot right now because of AI, right? and how, I mean, I'm a great artist on AI.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, my pictures are amazing, but it is recreating something that somebody has already done, thus not unique. And I have been thinking about that a lot over the past few years. Just like, if I am trying to be what others think I should be, then I'm recreating them as opposed to being uniquely me.
Wow, that is profound.
Yeah. And I in my youth tended to sort of shy away from the profound, think I would be uncomfortable with it, right? But my husband has really taught me to sort of listen and deal with that, and which is amazing because he's a slow talker and I'm a fixer. So it's like it's like our conversations were
So
like
much
that.
love.
Luckily, we just had our 29th anniversary, so we're still, putting it all together. But the reading I've been doing, and the women in my life who have just been so inspirational. Kat Gordon, who just created something. There's a woman who, Zoe Skaman. Every Black woman I've ever met,
Yeah,
right,
I
is,
know her. Yeah.
yeah, they are out there. I mean, there's a woman, uh, Madison Butler. I really started reading her on LinkedIn, and through her was introduced to all of these really thoughtful, strong Black women who, just because of the situation they're in, because of our culture,
Yes.
they've had to be themselves. They've had to understand and go through this idea of code switching. They've had to stand up for everyone else, and just watching them and watching sort of the, Black Lives Matter, all of through that just was really inspirational. And again, just another part of the recipe of me sort of saying, okay, if these people can do this, if these women can be so strong in the face of everything we throw at them, I have no excuse. I did a self funded project this year. I interviewed about 200 Gen X women.
Yes.
And I joke that the Angelique commercial has a lot to answer for. I can bring home the bacon, right up in the pan, and she's all dressed silkily, and you can see her coming from the office and coming home and making dinner. And, it was just a big lie, right? The whole thing of you can have it all is such a big lie. The world is not built for women to have it all, right? It is just not built for us to do so. And yet we all try. And Gen X women were really the first generation to sort of been brought up with that
Yeah.
idea. And a lot of us have spent all of our lives sort of just bashing at that, whether it's a glass ceiling or whatever. And now, in this part of our lives, there's a bunch of, I mean, millions of us probably realizing, wow, that was that worth it? And that's another thing I've been sort of letting go. I think transformation is as much letting go of things, right? And not carrying all that weight forward as it is accepting new things, or accepting things that were always there but you just kept buried, or whatever, you know.
It's a necessary precondition for transformation. Transformation begins at the end. And that's why, I mean, even your experience with clay is so important. It's like, let's not rush things. Let's
Yeah.
respond. Let's see what they need. Let's see what's important to them. Let's discover it bit by bit. And then there is this moment when the penny drops and clay is able to say, I am clay.
Yeah.
Wow, the glory of that, right? But it starts with letting go of, okay, we're not going to put any labels.
Yeah.
Because if you would have started by saying, oh, it's not this label, let's look for another label, that wouldn't have worked for anyone.
No.
But it's
No.
so important to accept the ending, but it does require grieving. It does
Oh,
require accepting
totally.
that so many things are not working.
Yeah. I mean, just grieving the, and I never know if how I'm saying it is right for the LGBTQ world, but just the grieving of, I had to grieve the loss of a daughter, right?
Of course.
And all sort of the weird expectations I had of that. And then, you realize that, well, you lost this much of that experience because they're still here, but in a much better place where they
Yeah.
are a fully fledged human being, which just, yeah.
And the same is true for the dames. I mean, I've looked at the
Yes.
site. There's very many dames on the site.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's also, daring to put the label of dame on yourself, right? We're above 50. Yeah, we're crones.
Absolutely.
Don't let go of youth in the
Yeah.
cultural definition. I feel very young, but in the cultural
Right.
definition, then you can't have the other stuff.
Yeah.
It becomes an either or thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think sort of the whole, there's the aspect of the patriarchy and the systems that we grew up in that say, right, and we've all probably had it played back to us, once you've had a child, you're now X. Once you've gone through menopause, you're now X. Right, all of these things. I'm supposed to be wearing, high-waisted jeans with an elastic top, and Crocs with socks, and I'm supposed to be, whatever, right? A crone, an old grumpy whatever, not sort of a luscious, lively, engaged woman who, does whatever they want, right? And it's easy for people to fall into that trap, right? Because that's the status quo.
Of course, yes, yeah.
Um,
And what do you look for then in a positive sense? Like what would you consider to be things that you aim for or that you would consider successful on
mm,
this side of things? For example, the Dame Collective or how you
yeah,
look at work or how you look at your art. What are the things
yeah.
that you look for?
I look for, in terms of work, it is that for me, it's the moment after the meeting or after the call where I have that time and I can say to myself, okay, what I brought to that meeting was additive, was generative, and I didn't lose myself, right?
Yes.
Or with, my art, it was, okay, I spent days gluing this down and now I'm ripping it up and I'm not beating myself up for it,
Yeah.
right? I'm not saying, oh, you're not an artist. You're not a this, you're not a that, right? Again, that comparison construct, right? Um, Art doesn't come easy to me. It's not, writing is really my thing, but I've always wanted to be sort of a physical artist. And
Hmm.
when I found Mosaic, I found the ability to, yeah, to create without beating myself up, without looking at these amazing things other artists create and going, well, I'll never do that. So why even try? It's those moments. It's, Clay calling us up at 10:30 last night because they're having they just went through their first big breakup, right? And sort of saying, how do I deal with this? I'm feeling really down. And sort of just, instead of trying to fix it, right? Just being able to say, this sucks and it's going to suck for a while and I'm sorry, right? It's,
Yeah. Yes, I hear you. Yeah, for sure. And it goes back to those elements of being connected with yourself. It's the
yep.
only place from which you can give and
Yeah.
from which you forgive as well, right? So
Yeah.
for us generationally as well, letting go of the inner critic
Mm.
is cathartic because we needed that. I mean, if you were gonna be like the successful woman who was perfectly groomed, had the dinner
Oh,
table perfectly set, and had done all the chores, and had gone to work and become a CEO in the meantime, right?
exactly. Right.
Then, gosh, did we need an inner critic beating us up to get us bloody there?
Yeah.
It's all of the deconstruction, right? It's all of the breaking down of that which is absolutely necessary. It's a precondition for transformation.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you find that in other spaces like nature or technology? Nature goes through this all the time. Technology,
Absolutely. Yeah.
just for sheer lack of finding something of real sustainable value to create.
Yeah. For me,
Oh,
fall is my favorite time of year because I've always felt a little bit like fall is what I figured out, sort of, the going through, sort of everything falling away, right? And just letting it rot, but yet something new coming from that. Um, and I look forward to sort of fall every year because it feels like a time where I can sort of rethink what's coming next for me.
yeah.
And we happen to live on a creek. I call it Britney Spears because it's more than a creek, but not yet a river. So, but it's one of three salmon spawning
Oh,
creeks in Washington, and our Ucky neighbors down the way dug out a swimming hole in the creek, which is illegal, but they did it anyway. And I have been worried and I didn't realize how much until yesterday that it was going to ruin the salmon spawning because
yeah.
it is so beautiful. It is so much like women and our struggle to have control over our own bodies,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
These fish sort of struggle and swim upstream and beat themselves literally bloody in order to sort of lay their eggs. Last night they started running, and it was like a huge weight off my shoulder because it's like, okay, they haven't ruined nature, but at the same time I realized it was important to me, um, because it is so affirming, right? That every year, they do this and people say, oh, it's fish. They don't think, whatever. They are still,
They
if they
feel
don't
so.
think,
Yeah.
it's just a beautiful thing. I think that reminds me that the struggle is worth it, right? The struggle to transition, to be all that you can be.
Mm.
A lot of women I just inspired by Jane Evans, another English
Yes.
woman,
Yeah, I know her work.
right? Yeah, who a lot of what they've gone through transition with are sort of big and public and out there. And I feel that my best transitions that have been most helpful have been sort of quiet and internal.
Well,
Um,
gosh knows what Jane Evans went through.
right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that internally that must have been very profound.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
The saying of we get to a point where we have no more fucks to give.
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
a lot of I think about the pandemic and the millions of women who had to leave or forced to leave their work and be at home with the kids, to school the kids, all that sort of all of that, and the sheer amount of dreams, the brain drain that we lost,
Mm.
the things that I I just would love to have known what it could have been without that, because women, we get shit done, right?
What would
Yeah.
you say comes next? And more importantly, if we try and kind of fast forward and go like
Mm,
5 years, 10 years, maybe 50 years into the future, once we've understood that the game is not competing, the inner
right.
critic, beating ourselves up, etc., what will we have discovered? What might that look like as a
Yeah.
society, as spaces, perhaps at the most intimate level as well, within our homes or within our meeting rooms or
Yeah.
our work in our society, within our policy making? What would that look like, really, for you?
If I were king for a day, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, right off the bat, I would want to, we have every day on LinkedIn, you see women posting these studies we've all seen that says the things women do naturally are the best management tools, are the best management emotions, all that sort of stuff. And yet, you know, we all say hurrah. But what I want to see is that nobody posting those anymore because it's been universally recognized,
Mm.
because in business schools they are teaching things like how to be empathetic, how to be authentic, how to sort of speak your mind without coming off as angry or emotional or whatever, that it is, no longer, it has become the status quo, right? That those things are being taught and those things are being valued. I mean, that's sort of the littlest thing, right? Which isn't so little. I mean, you want to see things like all these companies moving back to in office is just so based on capitalism and money, and so not about, and I'm going to say, the women in their employ, right, who are better when they can work the way they want to, right? So that transition of not being reliant on 80,000 square feet, right? Maybe those are turned into homeless, for the homeless. Maybe they're turned into, schools, so access isn't so, oh, I have to bus 20 miles or whatever. That we are a society that allows the people to create what is best for them, which is, I know, ridiculous. It is, these are things that, of course, women have been saying, since literally probably the dawn of time. But I want to see that change. And I guess I want to see it because I've learned in the past few years just how fragile it is, just how surface the changes were, because we've moved backwards so easily.
Yeah, sometimes it's like the salmon, isn't it? It takes a couple of trial runs before you actually take the jump, and then there's a quantum leap. And I choose to believe that, for lack of an alternative. In my mind, I choose to.
Yes, thank you. I needed to be reminded of that.
Well, actually, I think it's the Dalai Lama who said that it's the Western woman who's going to save the world, and I think that's rather grandiose, but it still shows us the importance of being a role model.
Yes.
Being a role model as women for people of age, for disabled people, for neurodiverse people, for the whole LGBTQI community. So for Aboriginal people, for marginalized people. And if we can bring things to the light, make them something that is at least discussed. I mean, even if the decision is disheartening, the fact that we keep bringing up the conversation, that we keep going at it, at some point, you break through.
Yeah.
That transformation actually etymologically means that a cross form. So break through, the same, break through. You broke and now you're through. You went across, now you can change the shape of things, transformation. And I think that our role in many ways is that quest to bring these issues, make them, give them a voice, make them visible, and maybe lose a few battles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Still, there's this mother instinct, if you were, of saying, there's got to be a bit of hard love because we've got to have these conversations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Honesty, authenticity, clarity.
Yeah.
And then we can all have a real conversation.
Exactly. That's what got me started on writing the workbook on finding your authentic voice. Because like after where I gave my speech at the 3% conference and talked about sort of, the fact that, our nipples crack sometimes when we're, and just saying all these words out loud, I had a lot of younger women come up to me and say, how do you find the courage to just say that? And that really got me thinking that we need to sort of teach this. We need to sort of just talk about it. And that really spawned the idea for the workbook. And it did. It took me, and this is just my own, how I do things, a few years of it being in my head going, well, maybe think about this, and then writing a note down. And finally, I had sort of enough little scribbles to sort of say, okay, this is an outline. This is worthy. Let's start creating. There's a woman, Dia, Bondi, who wrote a book, she talks about, and so does Cindy Gallup, ask for all the money, right? And it, again, normalizing talking about that
Yeah.
is a transition. And I think that is, again, something we all model, like you were talking about, becoming a role model, becoming that. And sometimes it's as simple as just saying certain things out loud and keeping saying them so it becomes normalized.
Yeah. And having a community to share that in and to kind of
Yeah.
help spread that voice, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise we're still in the kind of colonial thinking that certain things have to be kept small, whereas
Yeah.
actually community helps really project those voices and help it take different shapes as well.
Absolutely. How
So,
did you come upon this topic?
on the topic of transformation,
Yeah.
I think it's who I am, to be frank.
Yeah.
But it's a mixture of things. I'd say what converging and transformation is a combination of authenticity. So
Mm-hmm.
daring to voice and speak up what I'm the most keen on. I've always leaned into innovation, creativity, advertising,
Yeah.
strategy in the broad sense of the word, but it was like very careful explorations of the same thing. And at some point in my career, someone said, Corolla, it's interesting, like when most people are still kind of licking their wounds and figuring out how to move on, you're already moving on. What's that?
Mm.
I said, I'm actually fascinated by the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm not so worried by the stuff we're leaving behind. I have this pull of the transformation as
Mm.
potential and possibility. And after I left my role as managing director at Brain Juicer, it was kind of a moment in my life. I was 40 years old where I realized, gosh, I've climbed the ladder. I got here. And
Mm-hmm.
now what?
Yeah.
And then there was this kind of voice inside that went like, now I can do whatever I want. And I published my first book, which is a cookbook,
Right.
became an award-winning book. And I did that because I had something to say. I'm Argentinian. I wanted to show the world that Argentinians eat more than beef, right?
Right.
And so I told the story about my country and how traditions came about and how we were influenced by different things and really trying to change the way people view things. And as I started getting more into design and design as a discipline, then I wrote my second book, which is Change
Yep.
Ahead, and which really talks about it's a double intended name for the title. So there's change coming at you, change ahead, but change before the change comes. So change ahead of the change.
Right. Yeah.
And that became a really well-performing book that did something which I wish is my wish for you with your authenticity book, is it opened a community. So people started
Yeah.
calling me and they said, I read your book. I can't believe it. I wish I had written it. Want to talk? And then I started making friends in new places, started collaborating with the
Mm-hmm.
Chaos Pilots in Denmark, and started moving more deeply into okay, but if we want to make transformation happen, why is it so hard? And
Yeah.
that's when it hit me like, what is it that makes it so hard for people? You can
Yeah.
literally wake me up in the middle of the night with a blank paper and say, there's a blank paper here. I don't know what to do. And it's like my cup of tea. I feel I feel this joy, this immense joy in connecting with potential. Like we can do something. There's a new space. There's a new
Mm.
way of doing, and we can invent it, right? In order to accommodate it to what is preferable for a better world, for a kinder world. And for me, the act of destroying stuff is not so interesting. So this
Right.
particular time where things are destroying themselves, it's like, I don't know who start pushing the buttons, but stuff is going like, down the drain.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating time. It's a time of possibility. It's a time
It
of
really
hope.
is. It really is.
And
I,
I connect to that personally, because I have had experiences in my life that have allowed me to see that, if I'm going to survive all the people that I've survived, some of them very tragically,
mm.
then I have to create a life of meaning, not
Right.
just for me, but for others. It's
Yeah.
a privilege to be here. I mean,
It really is.
it's like beautiful, Life is beautiful. It's full of opportunity, and There's hardship for sure, for sure. We just at home we just come through a whole process of stroke recovery. My husband was, had a massive brain bleed.
I'm so
And
sorry.
yeah, it took us 2.5 years to sort of literally get back on our feet.
Right.
Full-time rehab, and it's been hard. But if we pulled through, it's because of the belief in what could be,
Yeah, exactly.
you know?
Exactly. I
Not,
really had a hard time learning that. Um, I grew up on a cattle ranch. Uh, my parents, it's a funny story. I won't go into it, but I grew up, my parents owned it for 50 years. I considered it home, long decades after I've left there. And I realized they sold it a few years ago. And I realized just how tethered I was to that, not only the physical space, but
yeah,
the idea it represented. And all my dreams were tethered to it. All the things I thought weren't possible or were possible were tethered to it. And
yeah,
it was a hard thing to do. I am very uh, nostalgic, right? And so I think that's part of it, this idea of probably what I hoped it was instead of what it really was. But I had to learn to cut that tether and let it go, which is a difference between you and I. You do that so masterfully, and I tend to wallow in it a bit
mm,
before I say, okay, Rene, enough's enough. But I really had to cut that tether. And then once I did, it was, as you were saying, the possibilities, right? The joy all
yeah,
became so much more apparent.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
always there. It's always, always there.
Yeah.
Um, but you learn through pain. That's why transformation starts with endings. You learn through pain.
Right.
There is no transformation without pain.
Yeah.
And I
That's
think
funny.
that what we can do to help anticipate on that is something that I wrote on Change Ahead, which is the quest for questions.
Mm.
Is we shouldn't be in a quest for answers. That's too easy.
Yeah.
We need to figure out once we do this, what is the impact of our choices and which new
Mm.
questions will we have? Because we may be using design to transform existing conditions into preferred ones. But we must be careful of what those preferred ones are and for whom, because they will have impact. So, what will be the next question we'll have once we do whatever it is that we do? Once we make that beautiful mosaic, for example,
Mm.
is the next question. Is the question, oh, do I want to make another one in different colors? Or
Right.
what is the question, right? And that's so important because it's going to help us navigate change and navigate transformation with intention, which is so like
Yes.
it's design is nothing without intention because otherwise it's just like, okay, it's just making stuff.
Right.
But once you start thinking about what is the question I will have next, you connect automatically to the now. What is the intention with which I'm doing things? And then you can feel whether that's coming from that authentic place, yes or no.
Yeah. That's interesting. If it's okay, I might. There's a section in the workbook in the authenticity that I think that idea about it's the questions, not the answers, that I think would
Right.
be really interesting for the women who use this book because in one chapter we're saying, so why are you doing this, you know and to sort of really be brutally honest with ourselves, because without that, then all the work you're going to do over the next how many months or years is going to be in pursuit of something that's not real. Yeah.
Yeah. No, definitely include those questions in there.
Yeah.
And obviously you can use all kinds of things that you already know as in metaphors
Mm.
or personas, you know. I read somewhere, and I don't know who wrote that, who said there are only two people you owe anything to, only two, your 8-year-old self and your 80-year-old self. You can use them, right? And
I
say,
love
when I
that.
look back, Well, how will I feel about this?
Mm,
And if I have to explain this to my inner child, what am I really going to say? And there's
yeah,
no, like, you can't kid those two people, right?
right.
So it's important to connect with the question, like, because it's the way a lot of our work in transformation is
Mm,
introspective. Even when I work with organizations, it's still, it has an introspective quality. But then bringing in the outside view is
mm,
so important. And
yeah,
that's what those questions allow us to do. And
yeah,
harder to do for yourself. I mean, you can look in the mirror and ask yourself a question, but probably you'll start giggling, you know.
yeah, probably, yeah.
I would.
Yeah, it's hard for organizations. I mean, I think it's harder for organizations to do that. I mean, I think we've been seeing that all the companies transitioning backwards to getting rid of their DEI
Mhm.
rules. All those brands that are doing that. Now I'm wondering what question did they ask themselves and what kind of answer did they come up with for them to think that was a good idea, right? And how often we fool ourselves.
No, yeah.
Um, we can, again, that comparison construct. It's like what we can talk ourselves into believing about ourselves um, does say a lot about us, right? And I think that's a perfect moment to ask those questions when you're that sort of raw, you
Yeah.
know.
But it takes a lot of courage.
Oh, so much, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I say in the book, this isn't a month's, this isn't a weekend, this isn't a month, and you're probably going to like kick the book and throw it aside, and because you do have to be brutally honest with yourself, and sometimes it takes a while to like sit with that and go, wow, I was not a good version of myself then.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
And then to be okay with it and not beat
Exactly.
yourself up about it,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Beautiful. So the book has a name.
Well, it's simple. It's authenticity, finding your authentic voice and learning how to use it. Um,
Okay. Well,
and
I'm going to add it to the show note. Where can people find your work?
well, I'm going to have it on the Dame Collective, and I know there's a lot of small, uh, women-owned, uh, booksellers.
Yeah.
That might be the way to go.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
so.
I really want to thank you for being on the podcast.
Oh, thank you for asking. I hope it was good. I hope it was
It was
useful.
incredible.
I
No,
enjoyed the heck out of it.
it's called Transforming Worlds because worlds transform through people like you.
Hmm.
And sometimes we try to act small, but it's those small things that change the world for
Yeah, I think so.
sure.
Yeah.
You know, look where all the grandiosity and patriarchy has gotten us. That's definitely not
Exactly.
because I think
Nowhere.
it's right this way. Let's see how that goes. But I'm much more hopeful that this comes from the heart,
Yeah.
that this comes from our true selves, and that that is the way to connect. I mean, we're an interconnected species. We're part of an interconnected planet. I
Hmm.
think connection is where it's at. You said it in the beginning, and for sure, that is the way to go. It feels like the right way to go right now, and that's what we've got.
Great.
So thanks
This
for
was
being with
awesome.
us, Renee.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And your hair is amazing.
Thank you.